So I've just finished watching Lucifer season 4 and I absolutely loved it. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed season 3 with Cain. That was a great storyline. I loved seeing Superman all grown up. He was great. And I liked that whole story of Cain. That was, the revelation was a shock. The development of the story was a shock. I do wish he'd had greater abilities and had been able to match Lucifer a little bit more in hand-to-hand combat. And I wish there'd been a bit more of a surprise in terms of his ability, and if he'd been a real threat to Lucifer, that would have been quite interesting. However, I still really enjoyed the story, so that was fine. But season 4, I felt like it was very different because it seems more grounded in reality and a lot more serious in tone. And that's basically because the joke is over. Lucifer was very very light-hearted at first because he was, obviously telling the truth right from the beginning. But because Chloe didn't believe it and she just assumed he was, just using metaphors, he could kind of it just seemed like he was messing about, and he was joking a lot of the time. So you didn't take it very seriously. But now that she knows, he is absolutely terrified of the possibility that she's going to reject him. And you can see that in his behavior, in his manner. He's not messing about anymore. He's deadly serious that he wants to know what her reaction is. So this season feels a lot more grounded, and I really like that. Now, Chloe herself is obviously going through an absolute emotional roller coaster, as you would expect. But her reaction is not really what she ran away, and I think that would probably be a normal reaction for most people. So that was understandable. But then she's returned, and she's just like Lucifer. We're completely perplexed and confused and confounded because she's so calm and she seems to have dealt with the demons and she's come to terms with it, which really, really quickly. And you can see why Lucifer doesn't quite trust it, and we don't really trust it. But I think what shocked me, that for sure, was the idea that after she's grown to know this man and she's clearly loves him and was considering some sort of relationship or future with him at one point, suddenly she's on the cusp of betraying him and doing something that could really hurt, if not destroy him. So that was very unexpected, but it was actually it was quite interesting, and you were hooked because you thought, well, she could, because in her mind, this is not, she fell in love with a man, and now you find out that she's found out that he isn't actually. So you could see where she might actually separate the two and be quite willing to go down this really dark path. But so that was an interesting storyline. It was obviously the additional storyline of Eve turning up as his first love, and I have to say though, that was really unconvincing because there wasn't a single moment where he actually acted like he cared about her at all, or that he could have had very deep feelings for her. I was never convinced, and it felt like they didn't even really try to convince us. They sort of just, because of the prophecy, they expected us to believe that these two had some super deep connection at some point, and to the point that she was his first love. I just thought I could see that was a red herring from the beginning, and I didn't buy into it at all. And I have to admit that the kind of trope that we've come to expect now from Lucifer is, every time him and Chloe gets close to getting together, something happens, pushes them apart. That Eve, obviously, in this series was that divider, and I thought it feels really tired, and I'm getting to the point where I want them to wrap that up. Now, I know that's kind of the heart of the story. Will they, won't they? That's what keeps us hooked. But I'm ready for them to wrap that up and move on. Now, obviously, the way this series has ended, I think that's highly unlikely because, well, clearly that's going to go on, play on a little bit more in season 5, if there is a season 5, and I hope there is a season 5. I love this show so much. Having said all that, the character of Eve I found absolutely fascinating. You know, from the way she looks, I kind of thought they were going to go down the old trope of this stunning, sexy, exotic woman who basically captivates men just because she is so beautiful and all that sort of thing. That's where I thought it was going to be, you know, Eve the Temptress from the, you know, I thought that's where it was going to go, but I was so pleasantly surprised when they made her character a lot more complex. With Lucifer, his devil face is his biggest fear, is his biggest fear, because he's worried that Chloe will not accept him, will not accept his devil face, and makes it seem like it's completely normal and actually almost like that's an attractive trait. And you can see why he's beguiled by her. And then Chloe, Eve recognizes that she respects competence, and so she becomes competent and helps them to solve the case, and actually wins her respect. And then with Ella, during a moment of doubt, she kind of infuses her with confidence and allows her to defuse this bomb. And then with Linda's frustration of treating Lucifer has been that basically he just completely misreads everything that she says. And I've actually been quite frustrated that she never actually says anything. And Eve picks up on that so quickly and is able to show her that she understands and relates to it. And you get a moment of connection, which is actually brings a smile to your face. So I found Eve as a character incredibly compelling. And, you know, I would love for her to stay in the show and for us to see what her development is, because she's obviously now realized that the relationship that she had with Adam, which is running away from, of being literally having been created from his rib to kind of cater to his needs, is the relationship that she's replicating with Lucifer. So as I said, she's like a chameleon who adapts to her environment to make the other person really comfortable. And she's now realized that she hasn't actually been living for herself and she needs to figure out who she is on her own. So I found that really compelling and interesting. Now, what I didn't like about this show and this particular series was Maze. Maze as a character has not developed. In fact, I think she's regressed. It's coming to the point where you're wondering what's her point, what's her purpose in the show. In fact, it's quite uncomfortable to watch because she's this, and it's nothing to do with the acting. I think the actress is amazing. She's phenomenal, but it's just she's got nothing to do. She's got no reason to be there. So she's now clinging on to people like a leech, and she seems to exist simply to be rejected. First, she's rejected by Lucifer, and then she's rejected by Chloe and Chloe's daughter, and then she's now latched on to Amenadiel and Linda's baby in a very creepy way. And you think, they gave her this interesting story as a bounty hunter. So she's clearly incredibly good at her job. But for some reason, this woman just seems to have completely no ability to live by herself. I mean, why doesn't she find somewhere to rent? Why can't she live by herself, and go off and do her bounty hunting and have some sort of kick-ass life? And then she can always come back and fight with Lucifer and the team when they need her. But she's just become a leech, a very, very irritating and creepy and stalker-ish leech. And it's just come to the point where you're thinking, either they, hopefully for season 5, if there is a season 5, they actually give her a storyline that allows her to develop as a character, or they just let her go as a cast member, because it's just getting uncomfortable to watch. Now, there was actually a little bit of a teaser, which I thought they were going to explore a bit more, but they didn't. When Linda's talking about motherhood, and then you can see May's beginning to reflect on her own upbringing and how she was raised with, clearly with, a demonic mother. And she clearly had no real upbringing. And I thought if they could explore that, let's understand how she came to be who she is, what her story is. That would be really interesting. And maybe they can look into that for season 5 and give her something, something separate, and that we can, a separate story that we can actually follow, not just this really, really creepy character that she's become now. I mean, she's got some amazing scenes, the fight scenes, she looks great, all that sort of thing. I love her as a character. I just feel like she's completely underutilized. In fact, she's just like a plot device, really. So that was the one thing I really, really didn't like about this season. In terms of the other characters, now I used to feel the same way I did about Maze. I used to feel that way about Dan and about Ella. And I really didn't like that, because they were basically like jokes in the show. Dan in particular just existed to be mocked, to be ridiculed, and to be abused, and that was really, really uncomfortable to watch, especially as it was with almost like with his consent. And it got to the point where you're thinking, if you are this weak and pathetic and you're barely competent as a human being, how on earth would somebody like Chloe have settled with somebody like Dan, who's just an idiot, really? That seemed to be his character. His entire character's story was that he was an idiot. And I'm so glad that they've moved away from that now and actually given him a seriousness that makes you respect him more. Fair enough, it's obviously happened because of a tragedy and he's really struggling with that. He's a bit lost, but he stopped taking the crap from Lucifer and from everybody, including Chloe. And he's standing up for himself a lot more. The problem obviously is because he's so damaged and he's in such a dark place. He makes some decisions which actually puts his own child at risk. And so you go from wanting to give him a hug because he's just so, he's hurting so much, to actually being so angry with him because he put, Lucifer at risk, and he put his own child at risk because of a stupid decision. But he was interesting. He was interesting as a character, and he had something to do besides, what he'd been doing from season 1 to 3. The other person who had very interesting character development was Ella. Now, we're seeing her sort of lose her faith, or question her faith, and she's kind of hints at this to everybody, and it kind of goes to show the way she's been treated, that they don't pick up on this fact that she keeps saying she's doing all this stuff on Sunday, which obviously is meaningful because as a super religious person, I assume she normally goes to church. But she's saying, oh no, I was doing all this other fun, crazy stuff on Sunday. Nobody picks up on it. And it kind of shows how her character is normally treated. But she's also now coming away from being this uber bubbly and, irritatingly positive and endlessly sunny character whom, in season 3, when Cain yells at her and tells her to shut up, I'm sorry, but that's kind of how I felt about her since she, came on the show. She's such an irritating, very bubbly and positive character, but really, really irritating. So I'm glad that they've toned that down now and they've actually given her a bit more, a seriousness that gives her a bit more gravitas as a character. And some of the crazy stuff that she was doing with Lucifer, like going to that nudist place, that was just like, oh my gosh, Ella, what are you doing? It was so unexpected and seemed so out of character, but that was great. So I liked that. And then there's obviously Aminadil and Linda, who Aminadil came on the show first as this just jaw-droppingly powerful angel, and he went from that to almost the same situation as Dan, being this really pathetic person who's lost all his powers and has no real purpose for existing apart from, just kind of hovering on the fringes of Lucifer's life. And I really, really hated that. Now they've given him a clearer story. Fair enough, he's still conflicted. He got what he wanted, his powers back, his wings. He went to heaven and has clearly realized that's not where he wants to be anymore. But he's kind of trying to figure out now what kind of life he wants to make for himself. And then, of course, they've had this child, and there's this very complex story. That was, I have to say, one of the fastest pregnancies in history. Although, of course, they explain that. But he's now got a very interesting story with this child who's half angel, half human, and very unique and unexpected. And even they don't know what that child's purpose and ability is. And I think that will be really interesting to explore. So I liked that. I liked their story. So I think that's all the characters. I really enjoyed it. I'm so glad that they took the time to actually develop the other characters a lot more, because I think if it was just Lucifer and Chloe again, will they, won't they, and if that was the whole story, I think I would have been done with Lucifer, to be honest, because that's tired and boring, and I just want them to move on from that in season 5. So they do something different. I don't know what could become the heart of the story, but they do need to move along. But yeah, that's my review of Lucifer. I thoroughly enjoyed it, loved the show, loved the characters, and I am keeping my fingers crossed that they get a season 5, because I think they just got better. So be very interested to know what you think. Leave in the comments below, and we'll see you for hopefully season 5. Thank you. Bye.